Hey everybody, welcome to Craft of the Yeti. I have had a few variations of ladders in the past, from handcrafted to 3D printed, and they've worked just fine, but I think I can do better. I'll show you how I made these. The first thing I needed was some square wooden dowels. I picked these up from my local hobby store a few years ago. They came in a bag with about 50 or so, and they've lasted me a good little while. The dowels will be used as side rails for my ladders. I'm planning on having a variety sized with 2-inch increments. I'm using my cutting mat here to measure some 4-inch rails. I then use the first piece as a template for the others. It's important that each pair of rails is close to the same length to prevent the ladder from having a natural lean one way or the other. As you can see, I have a few different sizes. I made more of the 4-inch variety, but I also have a few at 6 inches and 8 inches. I also used some of the offcuts to get a few that are around 2.5 inches. If you're going to make one, you might as well make a bunch at the same time so that you can do each step in batches. The next stage is to cut out divots for the rungs to be glued into. In an effort to make my life easier here, I want to keep the rails stationary. So I experimented with painters and double-sided tape. I got myself stuck quite a few times. That double-sided tape is way too sticky, so I only used it for the first round. I will often create one piece as a proof of concept before I go all in. I use that concept piece as a spacing guide for the rails. I worked on all the 4-inch ladders at first and worked in groups of similar lengths at a time. The rungs are spaced out 1/2 inch. I measured the cuts first on each rail and marked them with a pencil. I then cut them with my hobby knife. I did my best to have the cuts come in at an angle and meet at my mark. I later found a better way to do all this, and I'm going to show you here in a sec. Alright, here it is, the better way. Keep the matching rails together, and then use the 1/2 inch marks on my cutting mat and cut both rails at the same time. This ensures the divots match up better than the previous method. With the divots cut, we need rungs. These were made out of toothpicks. I cut the pointy ends off with scissors and had one piece that I used as a template for all the rest of the rungs. I tried using a box cutter and hobby knife, but found that the scissors were the easiest. Somehow I forgot to get video of the gluing process. I used as small of a dot of tacky PVA glue in the divot as I could, and then placed each rung on the rails. I then left them to dry for a few hours to make sure that the glue had fully cured. More trial and error here. Since these are wood, I'm using an espresso colored wood stain. Originally I used a disposable cheap paintbrush, but this was very slow and painstaking. Next, I tried dipping some paper towel into the stain and rubbing it onto the ladders. This worked okay, but with all the ladders I was planning on building, this wasn't quite fast enough either. Eventually, I just started dunking the whole ladder into the stain and wiping the excess off with paper towel. This was by far the fastest and worked well enough for my purposes. I personally like the look of rope being used to hold the rungs in place, and found this string at a hobby store. It has many thin strands which make up one giant strand, which is perfect. I unwound the string to find it had 2 larger strands made up of these much smaller strands. The smallest strands are what I'm after here, so I kept unwinding larger strands until I got what I needed. I want a more faded, weathered look to our rope, so I dunked all the small strands into a watered down version of khaki paint. They all went in and got swirled around with my finger. I then pulled each strand out individually, untangling everything and slightly wringing them out at the same time. I left these to dry overnight. The best method I found to wrap the rungs was to start with a very tiny dab of super glue and then go crisscross twice around the back, crisscross twice again but in a different direction, and then end with a dab of super glue. I used these hook tweezers I have to help thread the ropes through the rungs. I used my offhand to make sure that the strands didn't loosen, and once everything was how I wanted it, I used an X-Acto knife to cut off the excess. After fiddling with the string so much, it started to fray and frizz a bit. The ladder on my left here does not have the fraying, but you can see it pretty well in a few spots on the ladder in my right hand. To remove the frizz, I just used a lighter, making sure to move quickly, The entire ladders here are flammable, so I had to move quick and pay attention to ensure nothing took flame. I really like the results though. The stain left a bit of a sheen to the ladders, and there are a few spots where the PVA glue for the rung sticks out quite a bit. To help with this, I took the ladders outside and sprayed them with Rust-Oleum matte clear finish. I made this magnetic board in another video, and I also made one of the buildings here. The rest of the ruined buildings are from My Dungeons Forgotten Towns 2. I'll provide a link to the STLs in the description below. If you're interested, I also have an Etsy store where I have a merchant's license to print and sell the physical buildings. Again, link for that will be in the description below. I'm going to be quiet here. Enjoy the good bits. Thanks a ton for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more.